So in some ways, I don't know if it's for me to determine what the most important question is. I'm not sure that I know the correct answer to that question. But to some extent, I think the importance of different research topics can only be really judged in hindsight. The only thing I really feel confident commenting on is what I find most interesting and intriguing about robophilosophy. And I've probably undergone a bit of a shift myself in respect to this, because for many years I would have been interested in what I'd consider the standard applied ethical questions about social robotics. So, what is the moral standing of robots, if any? Who should be responsible for them if they do something that's harmful? What value might our relationships with robots have for society? What harms might those relationships do? These are kind of just the standard applied ethics questions that typically crop up in debates about technology and human society. Now I'm a little bit more interested in a different kind of inquiry, one that has to do with the possible ways in which social robots might disrupt or change our moral beliefs and practices. So we know from the past that our moral beliefs and practices change, and we have historically undergone a number of moral revolutions. You can think about human rights revolutions, revolutions in who counts as a moral subject, or sexual rights revolutions, changes in societal attitudes towards different kinds of sexual identity or sexual practice. Now, some of these historical moral revolutions have been precipitated or encouraged by changes in technology. So the question I'm interested in at the moment is, how might the integration of robots into our social lives change our moral beliefs and practices? And this strikes me as an important question, because if you think about those standard applied ethical questions that I used to pursue, when I pursue those questions, I use current moral values and standards to evaluate and critique technology. But what if the technology itself changes my moral values and standards? What happens then? What's the purpose of the critique or evaluation? And that's the question that I find most interesting and most intriguing at the moment. I think that the chief aim of my lecture will be to make the case for a scholarly inquiry into the potential moral revolutions that might be caused by the diffusion of social robots into our lives. And I'll try and do this by sketching out how this inquiry might be undertaken. And I'll also try and make some substantive claims about the kinds of revolutions that might be underway or might be yet to come. And to do this, I'm going to look at the history of moral revolutions, and in particular, the role of technological change in precipitating moral revolutions. And so I'm going to look at some of the structural properties or features of human moral systems, and I'll consider how those properties might be affected by the kind of rise of social robots. And one particular claim I want to consider is the extent to which much of our current social morality is agency-centric. And so I mean that in the sense that it's built around the presupposition that we are moral agents and that we interact with other moral agents to whom we owe duties and who we hold accountable and blame and punish and things like that for failing to live up to their duties. And what I'm curious in is to what extent social robots as kind of non-standard agents might require some reform or alteration to our current social morality. But I'll also then, I think, sketch out some other possible moral futures for our relationships with social robots. And yeah, that's the main focus or purpose of the lecture. So I think one obvious concept that they should reflect on is the idea of a moral revolution or change. So do people believe in the notion that our moral beliefs and practices have changed historically? And how comfortable are you with that notion? Is moral revolution something to be welcomed or something to be feared? Another concept I think is probably important is the concept of agency itself. What is it to be a moral agent, and how central or significant is that concept in our current social moral system? And another thing that's worth reflecting on isn't a single concept, so I'm speaking in two concepts for the last one, which is materialism versus idealism, in the sense of like, what is the main driver of historical change in human society? Is it ideas, or is it some change in the material factors of society, including technology? And so this is obviously a long-standing debate in social science, but how people think about the relationship between those two potential causal drivers of change might affect how they think about the notion of a moral revolution and how significant social robots might be in precipitating or causing another moral revolution.